Good evening and welcome to our COVID-19 update. I'm Ladi Akeredoluale. Here are the highlights at this hour. Angry youth continued looting of stores of COVID-19 palliatives and other reserved items across several states. Police arrest suspects allegedly with some of those palliatives in Kaduna, Plateau, and Kwara states. And Belgian doctors with COVID-19 continue to work to avert collapse of that country's health system. A group of rampaging youth broke into the COVID-19 palliatives warehouse located in the Gwagwalada Area Council on the outskirts of the nation's capital, Abuja, today. The youth who thronged the warehouses located close to the area office of the Nigeria Immigration Service carted away various edible items such as rice, noodles, salt, macaroni, and spaghetti. Some lucky ones amongst them also made brisk business selling some of the looted items as security operatives remained on ground to prevent arson or any form of stampede.
It is a sea of heads as rampaging youths converge on a facility containing COVID-19 palliatives at the Gwagwalada Area Council in Abuja. Imagine. Attempts by men of the Nigeria Police Force to disperse the crowd using tear gas is rebuffed by the youths who remain adamant. The youth proceeds to loot the warehouse while security operatives watch. Some of the youths berate the government for failing to distribute the palliatives.
Very brief food for the when they share no great share, because no finish. We don't see food. Now what do they want to share the food? They want to carry out campaign.
If you enter into that store, they have not even reduced it half. People are dying, hunger and starvation every day, and they have this kind of food in their store there to do what? To feed their ancestors.
Possess our possession. So this is part of our possession. We are possessing it as patriotic youth of this nation.
They also speak on the reason for their actions.
May God Almighty have mercy for our leader. What is happening here today? I don't know who come and rescue us from this property. Come and open the house. And may God Almighty forgive them their sin.
I'm a full-blooded Nigerian. This is our COVID-19. What Buhari government is supposed to give us.
While others struggle to take the loot home, some make brisk business selling the items. As soldiers and other security operatives remain on ground to prevent the youths from setting the warehouse ablaze, the looting continues. Commercial motorcycle operators also cash in on the situation to transport the looters and their loot.
Meanwhile, looting of government facilities continued today as well in Lokoja, the Kogi state capital, as residents there besieged a warehouse in Zone 8 to help themselves to relieve materials stored there. A similar incident had occurred on Sunday night at the ADP warehouse when it was invaded and several bags of fertilizer, water pumps, bag of rice seedlings, and other such items were carted away. There were sporadic gunshots, which led to people scampering for safety, closing of shops along the Muritala Muhammad Way, and a journalist was also said to have been shot in the incident. The police public relations officer, Mr. William Aya, says the gunshots were from hoodlums who were trying to scare people away to enable them gain free access to the loot. The Commissioner for Information, Mr. Kingsley Fanwo, who spoke to Channels Television on the telephone, described the situation as unfortunate, saying that the people were sneaked into the town by some others who were bent on causing mayhem.
get right. Welcome you. Or you can start it.
And staying with that story, the Nigerian Governors Forum says that the impression that COVID-19 palliatives were hoarded is not just inaccurate, it is entirely erroneous and untrue, as well as mischievous. The head of media for the forum, Abdul Razak Bello Barkindo, says for the avoidance of doubt, some of the palliatives had the Kakovit stamp embossed in them, meaning that their source was unambiguous. Mr. Bello Barkindo further said, quote, as we know, Kakovit operations are mainly domiciled in Lagos, being the headquarters of most of the public-spirited organizations, corporate bodies, and individuals that came together to form the coalition against COVID-19. Until mid-October, when the NGF had its last meeting, up to 10 states had not participated in the flag-off ceremonies for the distribution of palliatives. This was because the items meant for distribution in these states had not been completely received from Kakovit. Some other states had still had palliatives in their warehouse, but chose to keep a strategic reserve ahead of a projected second wave of COVID-19. Furthermore, as of a couple of weeks ago, some states were still receiving palliatives from the federal government through the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, and Social Development. And the Nigeria Labour Congress has asked the federal and state governments to release all COVID-19 palliatives still stored in warehouses across the country. In a statement released today and signed by its president, Ayuba Waba, the NLC says the distribution of the palliatives by the authorities would help assuage the sufferings of the people. The statement titled, NLC demands the immediate release of all COVID-19 palliatives and relief welfare materials, reads in part, it is obvious that the palliative provisions that were procured by the government for immediate distribution to the mass of our people at their critical time of need and to assuage the hardship occasioned by the lockdown were hoarded and held back by some government officials. The reasons for this have not been made known to the public. We also understand that many of the palliative provisions are already getting rotten in the warehouses where they were stored. While we condemn the ensuing mass looting of both the COVID-19 palliatives and non-COVID-19 palliative materials, we equally deplore the conduct of some government officials who stored away relief materials that should have been distributed to the masses of our people at their very trying time of need. We call on the federal government to investigate the conduct of those who hoarded the palliative provisions. End of quote. The National Youth Council of Nigeria is condemning the nationwide looting of warehouses by rampaging young people under the guise of anti-SARS protests, describing them as unfortunate and unpatriotic. Speaking at the news conference in Abuja, the NYCN president, Mr. Solomon Adodo, says the End SARS protest has been hijacked by criminals and secessionists whose mission is different from that of the End SARS protesters. The Youth Council is also asking the federal government to investigate state governors who hoard their COVID-19 palliatives in warehouses instead of distributing them during the lockdown. Members of the private sector-led coalition against COVID-19, Kakovit, have said the very light size of order and the production cycle required to meet demand caused delays in delivering the food items to the states in an expeditious manner, and that this has resulted in delayed delivery of food palliatives by state governors. Mr. Osita Wasinobi, in a statement released on behalf of Kakovit today, said the food package was designed such that each of the nearly 2 million vulnerable families will benefit from it. The organization says it will be providing full delivery schedule and flag-off dates by each state in due course. It also promises to share reports by its external auditors, which it says are on the verge of completion of all contributions from donors and spending alongside a full report of its activities. The Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Ehanire, has described the invasion of the Northern Office of the National Agency for Food, Drugs Administration and Control, NAFDAC, in Kaduna by some hoodlums as a major setback in the fight against fake and counterfeit drugs. He made the assertion when he made an assessment visit to the vandalized NAFDAC office, where he expressed rage that the damage done on the facility will take several years to rebuild. Dr. Hadere called on those who looted, seized, expired and counterfeit drugs as well as other bad beverages from the NAFDAC store to return them as they were not healthy for consumption. On her part, NAFDAC's Director General, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, says that the attack was a total invasion beyond the NSAS protest, adding that it would take the agency time and money to repair the vandalized facility and carry on with its operations. She also calls on those who looted the drugs not to consume them for their own safety. The Kaduna State Police Command has arrested and charged 25 suspects to court in connection with the looting of NAFDAC equipment and other public and private property under the guise of the NSAS protests. Parading the suspects at the command's headquarters, the police public relations officer, Mohammed Jalige, says that suspects were caught in possession of some of the looted items from NAFDAC and other private property in the course of investigation and have been arraigned on charges bordering on criminal conspiracy, invasion, and looting of public and private property. It would appear Nemesis is catching up with some of those who were participating in the looting across the country, as the Kwara State Command of the Nigerian Police says it has arrested 144 suspects in connection with the looting of malls at the weekend. Its Police Commissioner, Kayode Egbeto, told journalists that the combined forces of the security agencies led to the arrest of the looters. He asked members of the public not to hide them, but provide information that will lead to other arrests. The federal government is considering the use of phytomedicine, also known as traditional medicine, to treat the COVID-19 virus and other diseases. The Director General of the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, Dr. Obi Adigwe, disclosed this to newsmen at an event at the Federal University in Dutse in Jigawa State. According to him, the institute has so far developed over 20 medicines sourced from plants, and one has proven to boost the immunity of patients suffering from COVID-19.
The hunt for the cure for the dreaded coronavirus is still very on, and Nigeria is not left behind in this search for remedy. Nigeria, blessed with the gift of nature, plants and trees, Jigawa State also has enough potentials to aid the struggle against this virus and other diseases.
As it comes up.
One of the reasons why the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development under the Federal Ministry of Health is organizing a conference for pharmacists and herbalists in order to create synergy in the production of phytomedicines here in Dutse, the Jigawa State capital.
One of the strategic developments we put in place is to create stakeholder engagement across grassroots to interact with the custodians of this indigenous knowledge, to make them know what we do as an institute of the federal government, and also gain their trust so that we can work together and get more products that will solve the problem of our nation.
The State Commissioner of Education believes the state has overwhelming potentials to meet the demand for the phytomedicine.
We have a lot of trees, a lot of grasses, and a lot of everything that you can think of traditional medicine. We have them. We have the personnel, we have the human capacity, and a lot of things. And we have them, they're all here. And therefore, I think by the time they internalize the two and try to bring them together, definitely they will now boost the morale of the traditional medicine people, and therefore they will now get to be on board.
As the hunt for the treatment or possible cure for COVID-19 and other diseases continues, it is believed that this collaboration would aid in improving access to healthcare delivery in the state and the country at large. From Jigawa, Sadiq Ilyasu, Channels Television News.
Moving on to Yobe State, where as federal government tertiary institutions reopened for academic activities, the Federal Polytechnic in Damaturu says it has set up 2 committees to ensure compliance with the NCDC safety protocols against COVID-19. Its rector told Channels Television's Musa Mengi that the entire institution has been fumigated against reptiles and all must undergo daily temperature checks at the gate before coming into the school.
We have been able to demarcate our classrooms. We have provided the required social distances, and we have also provided for locations where we are going to have our wash hand basins. We have informed our students to come with enough face mask, hand sanitizer.
The NCDC reported 62 positive samples from 10 states and the Federal Capital Territory, the FCT. For the infections recorded on Sunday, Taraba confirmed 18 cases, followed by Ogun with 15 and the FCT with 6 cases. Between October the 20th and 24, as a result of the NSAS crisis in the country, the NCDC had suspended the announcement of new cases on its social media handles. In a post on the 24th, the NCDC had said the pause on its social media activities was as a sign of respect to lives lost and those affected following the recent violence in parts of Nigeria. But it also says that testing continued and daily reporting of the COVID-19 situation on its microsite was done. Although 1 new death was recorded on Sunday, between October the 20th and 25th, 5 persons were confirmed to have died of COVID-19 related complications, increasing the fatality toll to 1,130. The total figure for recoveries increased from 56,697 to 57,465 in 1 week. A total of 61,992 confirmed cases of COVID-19 have now been recorded across Nigeria. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll pick up some of the issues thrown up by some of the recent events concerning COVID-19, as usual, from a medical perspective. Please stay on with us. Thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back to our COVID-19 update. As rampaging youth continue to cut away COVID-19 palliatives from warehouses in different parts of the country, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Burata, is asking principal staff officers, general officers commanding and field commanders to be on maximum alert in order to deal decisively with any attack on their duty locations. At a meeting with top military officers in Abuja, General Burata says the recent activities of some scrupulous elements shows their desire to acquire arms and ammunition at all cost from security personnel. General Burata, while charging the commanders to arrest this trend, says 10 AK-47 rifles have been lost to miscreants in the last 2 weeks across the country, with the attendant loss of lives of personnel. He insists that there's no choice between a democratically united, strong and prosperous Nigeria and a nation disunited in a state of anarchy and retrogression.
General Burate further alerted the PSOs, GOCs and field commanders that the recent activities by unscrupulous elements have shown their desire to acquire arms and ammunition at all costs from security personnel. No less than 10 AK-47 rifles have been lost to this miscreant in the past 2 weeks across the country, with attendant loss of lives of personnel. He charged commanders to nip in the bud this emerging trend at all costs and directed them to warn their troops on internal security or on guard duties outside the barracks to be at maximum alert at all times and to also deal decisively with any attack on their duty locations. Lieutenant General Burate concluded that there is no choice between a democratically united, strong, and prosperous Nigeria and a nation disunited in a state of anarchy and retrogression. We must all strive for a united, strong, stable, and progressive Nigeria.
Let's take you back to our earlier story where we did say the health minister, Dr. Osage Hanare, had described the invasion of the northern office of NAFDAC in Kaduna by some hoodlums as a major setback in the fight against fake and counterfeit drugs in the country. Speaking when he made an assessment visit to the office, he expressed the fear that damage done to the facility will take several years to rebuild. The Director General of NAFDAC, who was on his entourage, says that the attack was a total invasion beyond the NSAS protest and that it will take the agency time and money to repair it and carry on with its operations.
Our own staff cannot work. Their space has been invaded. Their mind has been disturbed. They've lost something. Our own staff, we've lost something. The way things used to be is not what it used to be now. That is the psychology of invasion. The psychology when somebody invades your own private space. Seize drugs that are unwholesome, substandard, fake, that are dangerous for human consumption. And my plea is for people not to take any drugs that they took from this site. We cannot lose anybody. We shouldn't lose anybody because of this.
I would tell them to return all those things that they have been taken away because they are not supposed to be disposed of anyhow. They can pollute the groundwater. They can also cause a lot of health hazards, as has been suggested. A lot of people can become very sick, or some can even lose their lives from consuming drugs that are fake, expired, or prohibited.
All right, let's talk to Dr. Lero Roberts, consultant public health physician, who joins us via Skype from Ikoyi in Lagos. Good evening, Dr. Roberts. Thank you, as always, for your time this evening.
Good evening, Ladi. Thank you for having me.
Invasions, looting, and all of this, as Professor Adeyeye was pointing out there, this leaves a scar, not just on the physical infrastructure or the buildings or what has been carted away, but on the people. And I guess it brings me to the theme of what we're going to discuss tonight, which was the impact of things like this, but generally the impact of traumatic and stress disorders on medical personnel. I mean, those who work in NAFDAC, broadly speaking, are medical personnel, and those who work elsewhere are also affected by this. Let me ask you first, how bad can it get for a medical worker who faces some of the things that some of you have had to face in the last 6 or 7 months?
It can get very, very bad, Ladi. It can get to a point where they are almost paralyzed and unable to get up and go back to work again. I don't even want to imagine what the workers at the NAFDAC office that was looted would be going through right now. I mean, I know, and I'm sure many of us can identify with the sense of rape and violation we feel when we are robbed, maybe on the street, worse still in your home or in your office, and you've got your personal space invaded and thrown into complete disarray. It makes you feel so violated. And I really, my heart really goes out to my colleagues in the NAFDAC space. It doesn't matter what level or cadre they were working at. They are, as quite rightly said, healthcare workers who really need to be protected. And the point is that they are working for the benefit of the general population. And then this is the repayment. It almost makes them begin to wonder, what is it all for? Why are they giving of themselves so much? Because the very people they are working to protect are the very people now violating their space. That's just an immediate one that we can think about. We also have to think about the healthcare workers around the country who now have to deal with people being brought in who were injured in the last protests. Now, whether you are a protester, whether you are a so-called hoodlum, whether you're a victim, it all becomes immaterial because we all bleed the same blood. And the healthcare workers that have to attend to these people have to think and have to cope with the aftermath of what they're seeing. It can be so disheartening, really very disheartening. And we have to recognize that post-traumatic stress disorder, whether it's from moral injury to generalized anxiety disorder, is a problem that we're going to be dealing with for many, many, many moons to come.
The other thing, of course, here is that we're talking about the events that have just happened, but those who are affected by the events just happening have also been affected by events that had been happening all along. Those health workers who had been infected with COVID, those who fear to be infected with COVID, those who've had difficulty both with the recovery process and with the interaction thereafter, possible stigmatization and all of that. Do all this, would it be correct to say that all this fall, broadly speaking, under the PTSD umbrella?
I mean, when we say PTSD, don't forget the P is standing for post, meaning that the traumatic stress situation has come to an end. In this case, it hasn't. This is what we call insult upon injury. Because the traumatic stress disorder is actually, the things causing the traumatic stress are actually still ongoing. We haven't finished with the COVID thing. Just as we thought, oh, thank God, numbers are coming down, then we had this. We had situations where healthcare workers were being harassed to and from, couldn't even get to their places of work because of the road blockages here and there. So while, yes, in a broad sense, they are probably very sympathetic to what was going on a very individual scale, they are being affected by this, on top of the fact that since March, we have been at a position of high alert. It's exceedingly disheartening. And there are some simple things that we know can be put in place to assist. Will we?
Please go ahead. What are those things that, because now we are at this stage, and even though maybe not everyone is thinking about this now, there are too many things happening at the same time. The country has too many moving parts right now, and those parts are moving quite fast in some instances. But this is something, as you pointed out, we're going to have to deal with. And we're not talking of just anybody. We're talking of health workers who are in short supply, who are highly prized, and who are going to be very well needed.
The truth of the matter is that many years ago, the United Nations had already declared that conflict resolution, conflict management is a public health emergency, and we have to put in place. Now, one of the things that we know we're looking at is that now they're setting up all kinds of judicial panels, and I know particularly in Lagos State, His Excellency the Governor was looking for credible youth leaders to put on the panels and whatnot. The truth of the matter is that we have trusted members of the public, trusted members in public service who people listen to. Any healthcare worker at any level is seen to be a trusted member of the public. And these are people who, because our main aim is to make sure you are well and healthy, we are not in a position where we are looking to cause mayhem and damage. These are things that we should actually, we've got established networks of midwives, of nurses, of medical officers of health across the nation in different cadres, the community health, who know community members, and their voices are already being trusted, and we're not bringing them to the forefront because we don't want to pay them or remunerate them or recognize that they are very vital members of the community and vital members of society who can be trusted and who should be brought to the dialogue table.
Let me ask you to step back a little and actually define this, because of course, in the course of this, you talked about the post in PTSD being that, oh, the event that caused the stress is over and gone. You are dealing with the aftermath. In this case, that doesn't apply. We are still in it. We're still dealing with it. But what exactly is this traumatic stress disorder? What exactly is that?
Well, I will not pretend in any way to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist to delve into that in any detail. But one of the things that I know is happening is what the psychologists and psychiatrists would call moral injury. And this is a new recognized form of mental health disorder that a lot of healthcare workers are going to. People in the military who have gone to war can identify with this, where you have a situation where people are beginning to lose hope or lose faith or lose belief in standard protocols. So one of the things that we know that we're dealing with in the public health space is that when we look at this issue of testing and treatment, we have to now wonder, hang on a minute, exactly why are we doing this? And if we're doing this, what are we doing? When we now look at this issue, because I know that over the last weekend, the health facility where I work, we had a major issue because people were being brought in, brutalized by the protest, with gunshot injuries and whatnot, and there was nothing to treat them with. Things as simple as cannulae and IV fluids and whatnot were in very short supply. Relatives were being told to go out and buy. From where? The chemists and whatnot around were closed. Everybody guarding their property. Looters all over the place. Nobody was open. And we had to now manage all this on top of the fact that we're still dealing with the COVID pandemic, on top of the fact that we're still dealing and having to second guess our treatment protocols, having to second guess our behavior, having to second guess our judgment, our decision making. So there's no post to this. This is a TSD, a traumatic stress disorder, and we are having to face that.
Well, looking at it the way it is now, and speaking broadly, because as you pointed out, you aren't an expert in that aspect of it. But broadly speaking, how do people cope with these kind of things that you know? How do they mentally tune themselves in to be able to carry on with the important work they are doing, even while still aware that they do have this situation, as it were?
The number one thing is that this is not something you can do on your own. I wish it was so easy for one to just tune out, tune off, put off your phones, go to bed, sleep, and wake up and you're better. It is not. You do require, every one of us will require professional help. And the sad thing is that we don't even have enough professionals to help us. But there's no denying the fact that it cannot be done on your own. People, the healthcare workers need to know that they are being supported at their places of work, by their places of work, for their places of work. So it's a multidisciplinary approach, and we do need professional help. And we need to make sure that even the professionals who are going to help us are in a position to do so. This is not the time for trading blame, or this is a time for risk management, and to know that, look, it can't be done on our own. It is the one time where we also need to look outside of ourselves to find that help and recognize the fact that we are going through this. I mean, I'm at a stage where I know I can admit it publicly, but a lot of people are not yet there. And that also requires support and help.
If, as you say, this is something, I guess it comes to the issue of those who are too close to it being unable to see the wood for the trees. Those who are in it sometimes can't see how they are affected by this. As you pointed out, they can't even recognize that this is what is happening to them. Do you think within the medical community, within the healthcare system, there is a healthy recognition of what you and I are talking about?
Well, we do have some degree of recognition of what we're talking about. But like I said, the number of professionals we have in this space are already few. But we are learning from the lessons of other places. We're learning and we are recognizing it. It still boils down to the same thing. There's no point recognizing you have a problem. If you even know the solution, but the solution can't be applied. So this is where we are now calling on the powers that be that, look, recognize that you have trained resources. They are precious, they are few, they are trained, and they are there, and bring them out and support them and make sure that they are empowered to go out and do what needs to be done. We have several very good NGOs, very good programs and strategies. I don't want to call names, obviously I'm not allowed to, that are in place, but they are easily reached. And the Association of Public Health Physicians, we're in touch with all of them. And we can, but if they're not going to be recognized and brought to the dialogue table, we'll continue spinning our wheels in the sand until, I don't even want to think about it, Ladi. I really, really don't.
Okay, perhaps I can make you end this conversation on a positive note. Those who have looked at it, and I'm talking now about the COVID crisis before now, before the most current crisis, have said that all things considered, with everything put into consideration, the health care workers in Nigeria have done an exceedingly good job over the last 7 months. But how are they going to be able to continue to do that ahead? First of all, do you agree that they have? And if so, look ahead.
Honestly, I can speak for Lagos and a few other states. They've done an exceedingly excellent job in coping with this. One of the things we aimed to make sure that the health system was not overwhelmed. And I must commend again Lagos State Administration led by Professor Abayomi under His Excellency, our Incident Commander. They've done an excellent job. And the main thing that they have done that was so fantastic was that they listened and followed the science. There was no emotion about this. There was no politicizing the matter. There was no dividing the rank and file. They followed the science and stuck to the science and have applied the science in everything. You see, when you come across that hard rock of science, like I said, I've said it over and over again, everything shatters. And this is what they have done. So healthcare workers, I know, have done a yeoman's job. I have to commend midwives, particularly, who went out day and night in the face of everything to make sure as much as possible that pregnant women under their care got the right kind of care. I have to commend healthcare workers who made sure that as far as it was within their power, babies got immunized. These are simple things that have nothing to do with politics or emotions or feelings. These are things that simply had to be done, COVID or no COVID, and they went out and did it. So yes, I think they did an amazing job. How they are going to continue doing so going forward will depend on the amount of support they get from the administration.
All right, then. Thank you so very much, Dr. Alera Roberts. It's been a real pleasure having you on the program going forward. Of course, we look forward to seeing you again soon. Please stay safe.
Please stay safe as well. Thank you, Ladi.
Outside our shores, the African Union chairperson, Cyril Ramaphosa, president of South Africa, has asked nations on the continent to be watchful in fighting the COVID-19 to avoid a second wave of infections which could lead to new lockdowns. Mr. Ramaphosa was speaking at a virtual address to the Second African Union Media Coordination Meeting, says the pandemic has shown a great deal of resilience, and countries that have experienced a decline in infections have also encountered surges in infections that have made them to revisit the lockdown measures. We must try to avoid that scenario in Africa. We remain optimistic that the momentum will not be lost, and we will ensure that all outstanding work is completed. Unquote. There are currently more than 1.6 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Africa. At least 40,690 people have died, and that's according to data by the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Let's go to the country most affected by COVID-19 on the African continent and talk to our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, who joins us from that country's commercial capital, Johannesburg. Betty, nice to see you as always. Trust you're keeping safe.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Laddie.
We've just been talking about numbers, and the president of South Africa has been talking about being watchful about how people continue the management of this crisis. How do you think they're doing? What are the numbers telling you, for example, in South Africa?
The trend in the past week, we've seen increases, daily increases of 2,055, 2,156, 1,000 plus, and today, overnight, we've had 891. The worry is the fluctuation. That's the concern. And then the issue of adherence in various provinces. Over the weekend, you had the police minister and some of the policemen carrying out raids at nightclubs. That is not really allowed yet, but you know, they're going on. And you know the curfew is between midnight and 4 a.m. But they went into a particular nightclub in Sandton where you had over 300 people, no mask wearing, no social distancing, and it was over midnight. So they had to shut places like that down, and other gatherings that are happening, and the issue of, the simple things of the putting on your mask, according to the KZN Premier, Sihle Zigalala, saying you'd swear that there was no COVID because many people are just going on as if nothing is happening without the safety measures, health safety measures that have been put in place for people to just stay safe. So that's the worry. You have, at this point, you have 716,759 confirmed cases, although the recovery rate has inched up a bit to 90.3%, with about 646,000 recoveries in the country. But we had 40 new deaths overnight, not really overnight, but in the past few days, but recorded, confirmed today, bringing the total to 19,008. In the country, 19,008 fatalities, COVID-related fatalities in the country.
Well, the big stick that can be wielded by the authorities, and indeed they've threatened to use it, the KZN Premier that you mentioned, KwaZulu-Natal, in KZN, the authorities there have said that, look, we might have to lock it down again if you guys don't behave. Is this having any kind of impact, do you think?
Not really, especially when people know that the government is still concerned about the economy. The country makes a lot of money. GDP is boosted, especially during the holiday season, like through the tourism sector and all that. So he was pressed further to say, okay, what exactly would you be doing? And he's saying mass engagement, mass awareness, engaging with the stakeholders like liquor outlets and the like, increase mass screening, but and contact tracing collection. But the integrity of such data has to do with the honesty of people as well. So these are some of the things, and then enforcement through patrols. That's what he said in his own case. How that will work out, we don't know, but they're hoping that people will get responsible. They're deploying police. Police is part of the patrol or enforcement. But as he said, and I've said it to you again, many people, police can patrol, but there's spaces that police cannot patrol, and infections do not stop, or transmission would not stop in such spaces because police is not there. So the message of the president, the message of most of the officials is, let's get more responsible. Let's just know that this is for us, to stay safe for ourselves, not for other people, and keep other people around us safe as well.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Betty, for that update. Please continue to stay safe out there.
Thank you very much.
All right, just before we go, we've got enough time to say doctors in Belgium's city of Liège say they have been asked to keep working in spite of having COVID-19 amidst a surge in cases and hospital admissions. A quarter of medical staff there are reportedly off sick with COVID-19. 10 hospitals have requests that staff who have tested positive but do not have symptoms keep working. And that's where we're going to wrap up our COVID-19 update for tonight. Thanks for being with us. I'm Ladi Akiridulwale. Do visit our website, channelstv.com, for more updates on all safety protocols and to have a better understanding of what is required to stay safe during these very challenging times. Good night.